Well, good morning. It's May the 5th, 2025, and straight from the highly caffeinated studio, this is According to Willie B., and I, Will Bryce, am your host for the next half hour. Now, let me start off by saying today that I have to mention a small business that just started up, and then we're going to dive into our episode. I'm going to take you on a trip you're going to love. But there's a business that just opened up in Tennessee, Collierville, Tennessee, and it was opened by Danny Shivers. And I have known the man for a few years, and when I say that he has been an inspiration to me is an understatement. But he opened up Peak Home Inspections, and I'm telling you, you will, if you don't know Danny, after you talk to him for about 15, 20 minutes, you're going to feel like you've known him for all your life. But peakhomeinspection.com, it's Peak, and make sure that you tell Danny that I told you about him and tell him I said hello. The man is just a dynamo when it comes to inspiring others around him. So I know that this new business venture for him is going to be phenomenal because he's just that type of person. And I'm glad, I'm not only glad, but I'm also excited to see his entrepreneurial spirit. And it's funny that I mention this because I'm about to tie that into where I'm going to take you. But go check out peakhomeinspection.com, and I guarantee you won't be sorry, and tell him I said hello. All right, so let's jump into this week's episode. So remember I told you a month or two ago that I had received a semi-scathing email about because I never go check out museums. Well, Mr. Scathing Email, this episode is for you and for everybody else. But understand, I may have been wrong about museums because I found one of the coolest museums I never even knew existed. I found a lot of things that I didn't know existed in the city of Gainesville, Florida. I have a whole new love for Gainesville, Florida. So the Cade Museum, Cade. Now that may or may not spark a recollection in your noggin, but hear me out. Dr. James Robert Cade, Cade, was the inventor of Gatorade. I can tell you that yours truly here has an infatuation for Gatorade, and I'm going to tell you a little story before I tell you about the museum. So, it's been a few years ago, we're not going to talk about how many, we used to truck farm, and watermelons was one of the things that we farmed a lot of. And I can tell you, in the Texas heat, in a sandy watermelon field in July and August, you get extremely thirsty. There was an old country store near where we farmed watermelons. They had one of the old sliding soda boxes, had the sliding top on it, and the drinks just stayed intensely cold. Back in this particular day, they made Gatorade, the yellow Gatorade, in a green aluminum can. Now, it was a very thin aluminum, and so that meant the contents were really cold. So I could chug 2 or 3 of those Gatorades after being in a watermelon field for what seemed like eternity. But let me tell you, that Gatorade out of that can was the most refreshing thing I've ever had in my entire life. So I really thought it was cool that the Cade Museum, Dr. Robert Cade, was the inventor of Gatorade. And I paid my respects and said thank you. But more than that, this museum is because the actual name of it is the Cade Museum the Cade Museum for Creativity and Invention. So that got my attention right there. So, like I was telling you about Danny's business, opening up his entrepreneurial spirit, that's what this museum is built around. And yours truly here also having an entrepreneurial spirit. It was really interesting to see how different people's minds work on solving problems. Because a lot of times when people invent things or they have an entrepreneurial spirit, they don't look at things as a problem. They look at them as a puzzle. And it's how, and their mind immediately clicks to, how can I come up with a solution to this puzzle? How can I figure out this brain teaser, if you will? And that's kind of the way it honestly works. But I will tell you that being an entrepreneur and having done a lot of things, I had somebody tell me the other day how much they were impressed that I do this podcast, how impressed they were that I do Culinary Highway. I could never put myself out there like that, they said. I will stand by my statement, and I think I've told you guys this more than once. The number one reason when I go in to turn on the mic, fire it up, and start the podcast, I've always heard the statement, dance like nobody's watching. And trust me, if you've ever seen me dance, you don't want anybody to watch. But nevertheless, we're not going there. But dance like nobody's watching. I do this podcast like nobody is listening. However, the numbers say differently. We are now in 9 countries, and we are working on a way to put this podcast in 2 to 3 different languages. I can tell you, I never saw that coming. If you would have told me back at the beginning of the year that I'd been doing a podcast and be putting it in different languages because we're in 9 different countries, I would have looked at you like you had a third head. But nevertheless, here we are, and I am truly grateful and humble for each one of you. But let's go on to talk about this museum, because not only did it have the original lab where Gatorade was created, which I thought was insanely cool, they had all kind of hands-on exhibits and stuff. It's just, they have over 245,000 visitors a year. Now, what does that tell you? Well, it tells me the museum's popular. No, sir, that's not what it tells you. It tells you that there are a lot of people that are interested in how things work. That's what it tells me, because that's why I went in. I didn't just go in because I had been given a directive by a listener going, you need to go check out museums. No, I went and checked it out because, I get to go see how things work, and I don't have to take anything apart. So that's a plus. So the Cade Museum, CADE, make sure to check it out. It is $15 for adults and $10 for children. Now, I will tell you, it is money well spent on that one. You will get a life lesson out of it. You will learn things in there. So make sure you check it out. I'm going to tell you about one other place that I checked out in Gainesville, because Gainesville really surprised me this past weekend. I have a new love for Gainesville. I could actually see myself living there. And I know people are living in Gainesville and they're going, what? I don't see that. But maybe I had rose-colored glasses on. I don't know. But let me tell you, I went to a place that you would not expect me to go. And it is called the Kanapaha Botanical Gardens. That's right. I went to a botanical gardens, but these botanical gardens are not like any others that you've ever seen. It's $12 for adults. I'm not sure what it was for kids. I did miss getting that, but I know it's $12 for adults. It's extremely impressive. The grounds are, the pathways to walk on are really wide. It's so mind-blowing just at the way the grounds are kept. And let me tell you, they have one of the I think they're the second largest collection of bamboo in Florida, and maybe further out than that. But this bamboo, don't think of it as your little Louisiana little cluster of bamboo. No. This stuff was massive. I'm telling you, if you could just picture standing at the base of one of these clumps of bamboo, and it's as big as what's those redwood trees in California. It's that big, and you just look up all the way to the sky, and it just keeps going. It's just beyond impressive. If you don't go to that botanical gardens for anything except to go check out that bamboo. Now, each plant, each tree, each everything has its own little tag or signs telling you what it is. I could not tell you what the name of it was. I just called it gigantic. So if they renamed it after me, just let me know. If it says gigantic bamboo, you'll know that, oh, well, that's what Will was talking about. No, it is. It's truly impressive. It's bigger than life. And isn't that the whole reason to take a vacation anyway? Is to experience things that are bigger than ourselves, bigger than our daily problems back home. That's what the whole purpose of going on vacation is anyway. So this was truly that experience. They have the largest herb collection in the Southeast. I'm telling you, this botanical gardens is massive. Now, the name Kanapaha it translates to palmetto leaf and house. And the reason being, the Native American tribe, Timiqua, was the tribe that they built like thatched huts around the Lake Kanapaha. And so it refers to palmetto leaf and house because that was what they referred to, their thatched huts. So there you go. And I didn't butcher any of the words. I'm very proud of myself. But you have to check that out. It is one of the most impressive botanical gardens I've ever seen in my life. Now, I will tell you that I saw what I think, now I could be wrong, I have been once or twice before, what looked like gator slides. And if you know what I'm talking about, I'm sorry, it's water, it's dark murky water, and there's a slide, and that could only mean a gator slide. Maybe not. Maybe in Florida it means something else. But I kept looking over my shoulder, thinking any moment there was going to be a 4-footed little critter behind me, thinking I was, well, I mean, think about it. You're an alligator. You look at me and you're like, oh man, he's a foodie. That's one tasty morsel. So there's that. But I never saw any gators. Did see a lot of birds. Didn't even see any mosquitoes. I think the humidity was so high, the mosquitoes are like, yeah, let him have it. We're not going out there. But it was very impressive. Make sure you go check out the Kanapaha Botanical Gardens. You will not be sorry. So I'm going to tell you about some places that I ate. Of course, you knew I wasn't going to let this podcast slip without telling you that. And I have 3 places I'm going to tell you about. Technically 4, but one of them's owned by the same owner. But I'm going to save one of them for last, and you'll see why. So the first one I'm going to tell you about is the Upper Crust Bakery. Now, this has been a staple in Gainesville for over 30 years, and this is the reason why. It is owned by Ben Grusnick. He is, I was told, the number 3 croissant roller in the U.S. I have been to a lot of different French bakeries in the U.S. since going to France and have not found anything remotely close to what I experienced over there until this past weekend. Now I got some pastries. Their original location called Upper Crust is their biggest store. They opened a second location that's a little smaller, but it's called Upper Crust Petite. They had a pastry that I had eaten in France, and it is called a chausson, Chausson, and that's the way it's pronounced, chausson. And the guy said, "I'm impressed that you knew how to pronounce that." I said, well, I had to learn a little bit of French to go to France, French to France. Anyway, so I understood the pronunciation. But I had that exact pastry in France, so that's why I knew what it was. And so I had that and a cappuccino. Let me tell you, that pastry was so flaky. It has the peaches, and it has a light glaze, and it's just the right amount of sweetness to go with like a cappuccino that I had. Just mind-numbing delicious. I mean, there's just no other word to describe it. You people in Gainesville are so lucky to have not one but two locations of upper crust. And if you haven't checked them out yet, go. Go right now. Just turn off this podcast and go. I'll be okay. The second place I'll tell you about, I drove by more than once and almost checked it out on my last trip to Gainesville. And I thought, I'm going to go over here and check this other place out. Now I'm beating myself up because I missed out on what was an incredible experience. And it's called Adams Rib Company. And there's a old truck sitting out front, painted in the Florida Gators colors and everything. Got a gator up on the hood. I mean, because University of Florida is right there. Go Gators. And I have to tell you, when I walked in, I thought, okay, so let's check this place out. I'm not sure what I'm in for. And because I usually try to read a place before I go in. And so the waitress come up, and her name is Stacy, and she told me about how the company started and about Adam himself and what have you. And I think they had like 20-something different sauces. And I said, I just ate twice, and it's not even 11 o'clock, or just now 11 o'clock, because I ate at both upper crust bakeries. Don't judge me. And I do this for you. I said, I said, I don't think I can eat a half rack of ribs. She said, well, we have a 3 rib plate. I said, let's do that. And I said, for the sauce, let me get the gator sauce. Folks, when those ribs were set in front of me, I was very disappointed that I had only gotten 3. They were so much meat on those ribs and so tender. And that just a little bit of sweet tackiness on the outside just to kind of complement the spiciness on that rib. Oh, I'm telling you, I was in love. And then I ate one rib before ever dipping it into the gator sauce. And I thought, okay, I asked for the sauce. I got to try it. I dipped it in that gator sauce, and I just could envision me all of a sudden just taking a bath in that sauce, because let me tell you, that was absolutely just off the chain good. You people in Gainesville, I got some good food out there, and I'll be back. But if you haven't checked out Adams Rib Company there in Gainesville, I'm telling you, you won't be sorry. As a matter of fact, my next trip out, we are planning to do a full episode of Culinary Highway on Upper Crust and Adams Rib Company. So now I'm going to tell you about the third place I found. And I actually found this one before I went to Gainesville on this trip. And just never could seem to get the stars to line up to make contact. We kept missing one another. But I had planned on doing a full episode on Wahoo Seafood Grill. WHWAHOO. Wahoo. Wahoo Seafood Grill, right there in Gainesville. And again, been in business for, 20 years or so. And they are absolutely, when it comes to everything from the street to the cash register and beyond, they were everything. They were the whole package. As I went in, I knew without a doubt from the decor in the restaurant that I was in Florida, without a doubt. I was reminded of Florida Gators. It's everywhere. And it's the most fun decor you could ever imagine. From the van, the back part of a van being plastered into a wall. It was just really cool. And I knew I was in for a good experience. So I was able to actually make contact with the GM there. She happened to be on site that day. And when she heard I was there, she came out and we spoke. And she said, no, absolutely, you want to do this. I said, well, I could do it today or tomorrow. I said, my flight doesn't leave tomorrow until, 6 o'clock. So we've got until then. She said, let's just do it today. So we did. And it was a very fun episode of Culinary Highway to shoot. I cannot wait to get that episode launched. It's going through our editing now and should have it out pretty soon. But they did more than that. when we do a Culinary Highway, and this is not an advertisement for Culinary Highway, you're still on the same podcast. But when we do an episode of Culinary Highway, we 90% of the food you see on those videos is for it, we pay for it. That's another way that we support the restaurant. And so when I tell you that channel supports locally owned restaurants, it truly supports them. But they wanted to highlight more of their food, and they rolled out the red carpet. Holy Toledo, Batman! Let me tell you. They brought out a platter with crab cakes. I'll come back to that in a minute. They come out with this bowl of mussels. Now, I don't care for mussels per se, but there was this sauce in the bowl, and she was telling me what was in it, and then she told me there was bacon in it. I was like, oh my God, I might have to eat mussels just to get that sauce. And it was just smelled amazing. And then there was another platter that had crab legs and shrimp and crawfish and this big gigantic lobster with its claws laying over the top of all that like it was protecting it. Just so you know, he lost that battle. But nevertheless, they just rolled out the red carpet, and it was such a fun shoot, and it was just an amazing restaurant. And the way the owners and all have reached out and said, how honored they were for us to be there. And I've seen other posts and other reviews on them, how they have impressed the people of Gainesville over the years. And that is so impressive to me when I see mom and pops going beyond what is expected just to make an impression on their community and their customers. That really impressed me. Back to those crab cakes, because I do not want to end this podcast without telling you. Because I grew up on the coast, we had shrimp and fish and crab, etc. Like most people have, hamburger meat, I guess, because it was right there. I mean, it was as cheap as hamburger meat, especially back then. These crab cakes were exactly like my mom made. I had never seen a restaurant serve crab cakes that way. It's usually so much breading, or you have to get through the breading to get to the crab. And this was not. This was just a crab cake. And it was seared perfectly, and and the remoulade, again, a sauce, especially that one, I could just take a bath in that sauce. And I made sure to get a stain on my shirt just so I could bring it home. I mean, it was just phenomenally great. And the people that work in there, the staff, Sarah and all her team, just absolutely amazing, so friendly, so over the top. And that was before they knew who I was. Not that really makes a difference, but I'm just saying. But you definitely have to check out those 3 restaurants in Gainesville. And there's some more coming. I'm hoping to make another trip within the next couple of months to check out some more, and also do the full episode on Upper Crust and Adam's Ribs. So you want to watch out for that. But there's a lot more in Gainesville than meets the eye. And I thoroughly enjoyed that trip. I thoroughly enjoyed getting to meet so many different people, so many different friendly people in that state. I had no idea. So my assumptions were off, and I'm glad that I was corrected. But, that's pretty much what I have for you on the trip to Gainesville. I can't say enough today about how truly humbled I am. We are now in 9 countries. And it's just beyond impressive. Our listener base continues to grow daily. It's absolutely, and the Culinary Highway has taken off by leaps and bounds. It's been truly impressive to me to watch this. If you ever want to reach out and give any suggestions, or have anything that you want to rebuttal, all you got to do is reach out to any of our social media. You can go to accordingtowillieb.com. There's actually a message board on there that you can throw your thoughts on, and I guarantee I'll check into each every one of them. But until next time, don't forget to caffeinate and conquer. That's very important. And I greatly appreciate you, and have a great day. Bye-bye.